Welcome everyone as you are moving here into our room. Happy New Year to all of you and good afternoon. And thank you so much for spending maybe what's your lunch hour. So feel free to, take care of yourself. But I just hope you all had a wonderful holiday and you're feeling somewhat restored. I'm very happy you're here today and keeping connected with the policy work of BHI. And just a reminder, I will be recording the meeting today. So if you need to head out at some point for other needs, feel free. For those who weren't able to join us, you will be able to see that video link in an upcoming BHI Network Policy Digest. So thank you if you could be here today. And thank you if you're watching this as a recording down the road here. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot to do today, and so I'm going to get us started with our land acknowledgement. We would like to open this convening by recognizing that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples. These are the traditional homes of the tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We all understand that we cannot work to fulfill our mission and our vision of an anti-racist present if we don't first acknowledge and recognize the true history and cost of colonization. However, acknowledgement is only a very first step, and we urge you to engage in accountable relationships and informed actions. So first, just a quick few announcements. As always, we are back in 2026, starting a new year, but I always want to hear from you. So please do send updates to me that you believe would be good for the whole, and that would be great for the Policy Digest. I look to you to stay informed, and I want to make sure that I have the news that is pertinent to our shared priority to increase, maintain, and sustain Black homeownership. If you're not yet signed up for the weekly BHI Network Policy Digest, please do so as soon as possible. And as always, please invite others to do so as well. We want to continue to grow our impact and our network. And this digest is going to be full of advocacy action starting next week. It will be the beginning of the legislative session, and it will be a great way for you on your Friday morning to be able to kind of either get a catch up from the previous week or plan out your advocacy for the next week. So you will see the digest this Friday and every Friday, but because we are in legislative session and we're here to provide you with information and advocacy opportunities, you may see one or two additional digests as we move through the session. As we all know, no one really has control over kind of when the bills do things, and so we'll try to keep you informed in a timely manner. It was very wonderful to connect with many of you on December 18th at our BHI Policy Summit. We celebrated the closing of 1,000 CHA loans. We heard from Representative Taylor, Senator Nobles, and Lieutenant Governor Heck about the development and passage of the CHA and the ripple effects of that groundbreaking change, which all of you were such a critical part of. So everyone was there having a great time. We were all moved by the sharing of the CHA homeowners. They shared their personal stories about their journey to homeownership and how homeownership was made possible by the assistance from the Covenant Homeownership Program. People had time to connect. There was a lot of good eating, and it was a wonderful event. So we look forward to another in-person summit in 2026. 2025 was our first one, but it was a success, and we want to see you in person in 2026. So if you couldn't make it last year, I hope you'll be able to join us this year. And of course, the summit is where we launch our homeownership policy framework, and we definitely did that. So today's meeting, we will be going through the items of that framework for those who hadn't seen it, and to make sure that everybody understands what we're advocating for. So in our time together today, we're going to start with an icebreaker. I know that we're all eager to hear about the framework policies, but I do think it's important to take a few minutes to hear from one another first. And I'll be looking for people to share their resolve for the policy work of BHI. After that sharing, I'm going to spend a few minutes just reminding us about the impact we're making. But the majority of the meeting, again, will be reviewing our completed framework. And 3 members of our policy strategy group have graciously agreed to help walk us through the different categories of land, funding, and cost reduction. And then I'll finish up with the items in our zoning category. And as always, we'll end with a few minutes of open floor time to hear news from you. And feel free to use that space to share news that's for the good of the whole. And with that, we're going to move into our icebreaker. Now, in 2025, the Black Home Initiative website launched a BHI Statement of Resolve. If you haven't had a chance to read that statement, I really do suggest you do. It may be that inspiration you need at this moment. Above are a few of the essential parts of the statement, but certainly not all of them. And as we move into 2026, with all that is happening in the political environment, it is important that we recenter ourselves and why we are here together today and why we keep showing up for change. BHI exists to increase, sustain, and maintain Black homeownership, to begin to repair the harm of discrimination, and end the racial homeownership and racial wealth gaps. So everyone who is here is resolved to those shared goals. And so I ask you in this icebreaker, why are you personally resolved to work to increase, maintain, and sustain home ownership among Black households? And I hope a few of you will choose to share with the group today. As any of you know how Zoom works, very hard to see all of the comments and all of the raising of hands. So I'm completely open for feeling free to unmute and just kind of respect if you hear somebody else talking at the same time, and we'll take some turns. But it would be very, wonderful if just a few of you would be willing to share why you personally feel resolved to continue to work with BHI and in the policy work, or even as simply as, why are you here today, which probably is a part of that resolution. Do I have someone who might want to kick us off? Charles?
One sec there. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Well, being in the oversight function is always a little different, but for today, I think this is a great question. I was out last night at a candlelight vigil here in Olympia talking to a few people, and there's sort of a palpable air of despair under a lot of people's anger based on, current events. And I asked all around if people, had even heard of the Covenant program, and of course they hadn't. So, soapbox opportunity. And it's, it's nice even in these very dark moments. And of course, like dark, literally, like it was cold, it was like freezing and raining and all this sort of stuff. And you're trying to keep a candle lit and all of that, like literally, but also, you know, um, to be able to just kind of talk to people who might not otherwise be tracking policy wins, can be, helps to kind of get back up and do it again the next day, I suppose. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much for sharing, Charles, and thanks for being here today. Nicole?
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. For me, it is the very palpable experience of being affected by these programs, these laws, these things, how they've affected me personally, my family, people who look like me, and understanding the clarity that the Black Home Initiative is about supporting foundational Black folks who have roots here in this country hundreds and hundreds of years back, that have a unique perspective and a unique experience than our diaspora brothers and sisters. So also being clear that, BHI is about foundational Black and supporting that community that has seen trials in this country for hundreds of years. And so for me, it is like breathing for me to be here and have this conversation and be a part of this work, because it ensures that for me, that my children and now my grandson, I now have a new grandson, may not experience maybe a few things that I had to experience and that my mom and dad had experienced and my grandparents, and going on and on and on, every generation trying to make it a little better for the next. So that's why I'm here, and that's why it's important that this work continue.
Thank you for that sharing, Nicole. And Nicole is, of course, a core member of BHI, leaning in many different ways. Ryan?
Before I go, I just want to make sure that we all take a second there and congratulate Nicole on the new grandchild. That's freaking
This is
amazing.
true.
Awesome. Always good. Always wonderful. Congratulations. Really happy. Um, what my kind of response or answer to this is maybe can be interpreted by some as being trite, but for those of you who know me well, you know that I mean it when I say, like, when at Habitat, our vision is to build a world where everyone has a safe, decent, and affordable place to call home. Um, and that for a lot of folks, that's really easy to say and kind of to think through sometimes. And it's easy to dismiss something like that as, oh, that's just a nice little vision statement, and you kind of move on. But the reality is, from the way that I approach things and the way we approach things here at Habitat, like, that's the job. That's what we're doing. We are putting everything we can, everything we are, everything we do is geared towards accomplishing that vision of building a world where everyone has a safe, decent, affordable place to call home. And it is incredibly important to note that everyone means everyone. Study after study after study after study has shown, in particular, that if you create programs that help people of color, in particular Black families, it is more likely to help more people all across the entire continuum. So that's why we're here, and that's why I'm here particularly, is to be able to help continue to push forward programs that make the possibility of an affordable place to call home a reality for more Black families specifically.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ryan. Ms. Ruby, Happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you so much. Years ago, my mom, just like a lot of mothers and grandmothers of people on this call, came up through their great migration with their little nickels and dimes saved. And, after working in Seattle, they ended up buying a home, worked really hard, and over the years, many lost them, many, through all kinds of reasons, a lot of different reasons. My mom still had hers. I moved to Georgia for quite some time, but I came back and found out that, Black people had lost their homes and were still losing their homes. So that's why I'm in this work today, just to make sure those that do want to stay here are able to get homes and are able to live in them comfortably, without fear of losing them. That's pretty much why I do this work.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ms. Ruby. And we know how hard you work at this and how much of your time and effort is always happening, and greatly appreciate you.
Thank you.
And there looks to be just a few more comments here in the chat. Tiara has a resolution because a homeownership gap is the result of intentional historical policy decisions. And it's going to take equally intentional collaborative work to reverse those effects, and because we deserve it. So Rico, I'm going to give you the last comment here.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the leadership that you provide in this space. I will just say that this is a topic about which I am entirely obsessed. You know, I I was born into the Central District. My family lived in Tacoma, and then lived here for a long time before we were displaced ourselves. And I have recently been able to return to live in Seattle. And the city of Seattle talks a great deal about anti-displacement and what are the assistance programs that we provide, and all of those certainly exist. But I am really compelled to try to put forth a more aggressive solution that really acknowledges the past harms to Black and Brown families, and actually giving the opportunity for both young families and multi-generational families to like own and be in control of their own destinies here. Um, uh, and I know that we are also a part of a network of cities across the state, and we need to be a part of that affordable and sustainable solution. And there's so much more that we need to be doing. So I'm super excited to be working with all of you.
Well, we thank you so much for your partnership, Rico and City of Seattle. Thank you all for sharing. I know that it's a new year. There's a lot going on, a lot to process, and I appreciate your authenticity and your ability to share. I'm going to move us forward here from our icebreaker, and we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our impact. Thank you again to those who shared their resolve. I want you to know that those resolutions are leading to change, and it has been leading to significant impact. We all have a shared priority we work around, and it does have a number to it. We're trying to make sure that we're not just talking about things, but that we're tracking our progress and that we're seeing concrete change. And we made significant progress towards our BHI shared priority. In fact, we are more than halfway towards our goal of 1,500 new low and moderate income Black households. 762 foundational Black home buyers have been served to this date. These are buyers who would not have been able to purchase a home without a BHI program, a BHI product, a BHI trust made with one of you or with another member of another team of BHI. And so this achievement is a direct reflection of what's possible when we collaborate with purpose, intention, and shared commitment. And the impact is real. And it is because of our collective effort. So I hope you can take a moment and kind of celebrate that milestone. It's a big one. And on the policy side here, we also continue to expand our reach. Our work is fueled by the advocacy of the 200 plus active members of the BHI Network Policy Group and the 650 plus people who subscribe to our BHI Network Policy Digest. We look to you to keep yourselves informed and connected, and to have you advocate, to testify, to sign in support of policies, to send advocacy letters, to connect with your legislators. And you are the BHI partners and supporters who create this change that we see. And so I encourage you all to keep leaning in. And through our time together that we spent in 2025, we co-created and should be very proud of the 2026 Homeownership Policy Framework. This framework is right-sized, it is impact vetted, it is an advocacy agenda grounded in our shared priority and our collective expertise. And it's also a pretty beautiful looking document. I'm really excited about the energy coming off of the framework this year. Now, the framework's development was stewarded by our policy strategy group, and we want to thank them for their work. This group meets bi-weekly, and they identify and vet policy actions for the framework. They help us finalize that framework and lead advocacy mobilization. They navigate changes for the framework. And so a shout out to these dedicated group members. They are our BHI policy ambassadors as well. So be sure to connect with them about any of your policy questions, and you can always reach out to me if you want to get connected. So before we begin our review of the framework, I do want to just remind you that the framework takes an ecosystem approach. We look at policies across different levels of governance in 4 different categories: funding, cost reduction, zoning and regulatory reform, and land acquisition and value capture. And I'll also remind you that the framework is a living document. So changes can be made as policies fail to move forward in the legislative process or new policies emerge that we didn't have on our radar. We have those 14 or 15 people with their ear to the ground, but there's always something we don't know. So please keep in mind today that the list we'll be running through was finalized in mid-December, and that there are probably already a number of significant changes that are happening. We'll go through some of those as we move forward. So please reach out if you know of a bill that you see as a good fit for our framework and our advocacy, or if you have an update today that you don't hear about. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Victoria to walk us through our land category.
Hi, Bambi. Thank you guys so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Banyan, and I'm a member of the BHI Network on Policy Strategy Group. Today, I'm going to be walking through the land acquisition and value capture category in the framework. The items in the category substantially increase tools that capture land value through acquisition and assemblage to preserve affordability and prevent displacement. There is 1 lead item and 2 support items in this category. Next slide. Our lead item in this category is the Coordinated Land Banking Bill, sponsored by Representative Peterson. This bill was introduced as the House Bill 1974 last year, and it has been revised after significant work group and stakeholder input over the interim. The bill will be submitted shortly. It is out there. I've seen it, others have seen it, and it is going to get submitted, and we will all be able to see it shortly. As you know, land can be up to 1/4 of the cost of housing development, and yet low cost and no cost parcels exist that could become sites for future homeowners. However, finding that land, holding that land, and preparing the land takes time and resources. Developers creating affordable homes are short on time and resources, so land banking authorities will take this work on. The comprehensive support will also be available to small and emerging developers, ensuring that BIPOC-led and community-driven developers can build solutions for their communities. Coordinated land banking will move land into the hands of those ready to build solutions for our state. Those solutions will also build trust as communities witness the connection between the planning and action. If you want to see increased Black homeownership, we want our Black communities to be involved. Be involved in that development. Land is a missing piece of that puzzle, and this bill will address it. If you want to get more involved in advocacy in this bill, you can reach out to myself or any of the stakeholders or Bambi, and we can get you involved. Moving on to our support items, there are 2 in this category for our framework. The first bill addresses the holding of land as it's prepared for development. The development of affordable homes often takes time, more time than expected, as different sources of funding must be stacked together to ensure affordability can be achieved. Rather than have fenced-off property that contributes to blight, this bill seeks to activate those properties for nonprofit or community uses. Currently, properties where affordable homes will be constructed sit exempt from property tax. However, if you activate the property for any reason, for an art, a temporary public use, even if there are for nonprofit uses, they will be charged property taxes. These charges lessen the money available for future development and lessen activity and engagement in our community. This bill seeks to change that. The second support item in this category seeks to legalize mobile dwelling units, or MDUs. MDUs are small, movable homes, such as tiny homes on wheels, that are far less expensive and far quicker to install than any other type of housing. When our BHI Sustaining Existing Homeowners group met and learned about this bill, they saw the immediate opportunity for existing homeowners to quickly and economically convert extra yard space to house family members or caregivers, or provide a source of rental income to help them with their mortgage. Black homeowners who are house rich and cash poor can utilize MDUs as a quick turnaround solution for urgent needs where many community organizations who have felt this bill would be useful in their community with their community. And next slide. So right here we have a bit of time, and so before we hear about the next framework policy, I wanted to just pause and ask if there was any questions or thoughts that people wanted to share on those three pieces of legislation.
And we know this is a lot of information, and so we're trying to pace this and allow you an opportunity to kind of digest a little bit. And just if something's coming to mind for you. So remembering that the three bills we're talking about here concern land banking, making sure that interim use of a property as it's waiting for affordable homes to be built can be activated without penalty. And then at the end there, learning about the second support bill, and I'll go back so you can see that. The legalization of mobile dwelling units in our state. Questions or thoughts coming up for anyone? Feel free to raise your hand or pipe in. You have some late breaking news about when we're going to see a hearing for any of these, that'd be great. Or, a pre-file, anything that you have would be great to hear. All right, we're warming up. We're warming up, people. Okay, Victoria, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for your work on the strategy group. Victoria is someone who you could reach out to if you have further questions. And of course, I'm always available. I will just make the one correction that the Coordinated Land Banking Bill, HB 1974, is sponsored by Representative Natasha Hill of Spokane, Washington. I am positive that Representative Peterson, who is the chair of housing, and she is the vice chair of housing, are very much excited about the bill.
Did I say Representative Peterson?
You did, and that's all
I'm
good.
so sorry. I know that it's Representative Hill. I'm so sorry. That was just a slip of the tongue.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And I'll hand that over to Ryan.
Hi, everybody. As you probably all know, my name is Ryan Donahue. I work over at Habitat for Humanity, Seattle King and Kittitas County, and we are members of the BHI Policy Strategy Group. I'm going to be talking about funding, which is everyone's favorite topic always, because that's how we be able to build a lot of these things is through the money that we generate. There's one lead item and two support items here. So jumping right on in, let's get in on the exciting thing and talk about the Housing Trust Fund. Housing Trust Fund is the lead item in the funding category here. We've seen substantial increases, as you can tell from this chart here, in how much and what funding has gone to affordable housing and home ownership over the years. We're really, really excited to see this number continue to grow. But one thing I really want to take a quick second and highlight is just how much it has grown, not only in the last few years, but even from last year to this year. We're in a supplemental budget year. So what that means for most people, if you're aware, usually that is less money that comes in. Usually it's not a ton of opportunities. It's some, but not necessarily a lot. The proposed capital budget that was proposed by the governor just a few weeks ago, it feels like it was right before, like the week before Christmas, actually includes $73 million for affordable home ownership, which is, needless to say, huge. that's a massive chunk of money going towards affordable home ownership, particularly in a supplemental budget year. Obviously, it is not locked in. As all of us probably know, the governor's suggestion or proposal is really just that. It is a proposal. We will see what happens. But what is going to be really, really important for us, especially over the next few weeks and months, is to make sure that our legislators know that what the governor has proposed here, particularly for affordable home ownership, is exactly the place they want to land and exactly something we want to be strongly supportive of and need them to fund it at those levels, right? Just want to kind of note that there's actually a hearing on Monday that is, so these are actually already being heard and scheduled. So Monday, you'll see the Senate take up the capital budget hearing in the Ways and Means Committee. And you can go and sign up right now for that. You also can go ahead and go and sign up for the House version of the capital budget, which is in the Capital Budget Committee, very creatively named, I know. And that is going to be heard on Wednesday, if I'm remembering correctly. Both of which actually, no, I'm sorry, that is being heard on Thursday. I apologize. Both of which are opportunities for you to log in right now. You can just sign in, as Bambi already mentioned. You can just sign in to indicate your support. You could write a quick letter. You could be able to do any number, or you could even sign up to testify either in person or remote. But please make sure you do that. I would urge you to do it sooner rather than later, because you don't want to be the last person after hours and hours and hours of testimony, or even worse, run out of time and not be able to testify even though you signed up. So would strongly urge you to be able to do that. Before I move on, I am seeing that there's some questions in the chat. Let's go ahead and come back to that actually, I'll answer this right now real quick. I'm seeing Barb asking if we've seen outcomes increase along with funding. The easy answer to that, Barb, is yes. We've actually seen I know at least what I can see. I will say I don't know if there's been any statewide look, at least though from a habitat lens, a habitat perspective. I can tell you that, in the 6 years that we've been seeing increased funding for affordable home ownership, we've seen our pipeline grow tenfold, probably, maybe more. And it's continuing to grow all the time. So really want to, and I have no doubt that for a lot of other organizations that are doing affordable home ownership production, that they are seeing similar growth. Maybe not always the same percentage, maybe it is, maybe more, but certainly we are seeing increased affordable home ownership opportunities coming along with that increased dollar amount. So continuing on, we do have two funding things that are in the support category. The first one is City of Seattle home ownership. I'll actually note both of these support items are in the are specifically for the City of Seattle, but that doesn't mean the idea can't grow outside of the city. They're great opportunities to be able to point to and great things to highlight. When it comes to, and thank you, by the way, Jason, for sharing those links to be able to click on and sign in. On Seattle home ownership, there's really three things here. First one is going to be the budget. As you can see here, the timeline is here spelled out. But continuing those conversations as you talk with Seattle City Council members, as you talk with folks, please, please, please emphasize the importance of funding affordable home ownership in the budget as they are continuing to do that. We're a little early in the process, but the more opportunities that the City Council members hear about the importance of funding affordable home ownership, the more likely they'll actually do it when it gets to budget hearing time, running through summer and then going into fall. Missing middle housing is another thing that's really important to note. At the end of this year, they passed the final versions of HB 1110 compliance, which basically now allows for a significantly increased amount of housing and home ownership development across the city. We're really, really excited about that. We need to make sure that it actually gets built, though. It's one thing to pass the capacity that allows it. It's another thing to actually build it. So I know a lot of the groups on here that are looking forward to being able to take advantage of those opportunities, and the more the merrier on that. And then towards the end of the election, Mayor Harrell announced that in the run-up to the election, I should say, Mayor Harrell announced the idea of a reparation study, trying to be able to take a look at what could be done at the city level. We do have a leadership transition, which I think is really important to note. What that means is everything that the Harrell administration was doing oftentimes kind of slows down for a minute while the new administration steps in, gets up to speed, decides what they want to prioritize, and moves on. So if this is something that you want to be able to support and continue to encourage, we need to make sure that we are talking with folks, particularly who are associated with the new mayoral administration, making sure that Mayor Wilson and her team know the importance of things like this, of this in particular, and other things that they're working on to kind of make sure to elevate that. So when they are finalizing their plans, they can include that in there. That leads me to the next thing that is on our support item, which is the Partnership for Accessory Dwelling Unit Development. I'm going to very briefly note, thank goodness that Rico is on, because there's no way in heck I'm going to be able to do this justice, but I'm going to do my darndest if I can. I'll tell you what. This is an idea that's actually come out of the City of Seattle, and more particularly out of OPCD and Rico's office, that is designed to be able to try and encourage additional housing production, as well as providing a pathway for people to be able, and particularly Black communities, to be able to stay in their homes, creating opportunities to unlock generational wealth and land value to be able to make this happen. It's being proposed currently as a pilot program. It's going to be a demonstration program that provides a small group of homeowners assistance to be able to add an ADU on their property. They'll be able to receive rental income that will be able to help offset some of the costs and be able to make it more likely that they can be able to help us increase the housing production, as well as stay in the communities that they already are. It's going to be able to help simplify development, hopefully, and allow more homeowners to develop their property in order to meet their long-term vision. So the plan, and I will note, I think my understanding is Mayor Wilson is going to be briefed on this proposal soon. I don't know when soon is, but I imagine Rico could potentially answer that question for us when we wrap up here. But we do know that we'll be looking forward to people to helping us out with this. I do know that the current plan is to launch the program towards the end of this year, or at least before the end of this year, I should say. They're in the process of forming partnerships with community-based organizations and in close contact with many members of the BHI existing homeowners group, who, as I understand it, and Ms. Ruby, you would know this better than me, are really excited about this opportunity. So I just kind of want to highlight that's a really important component here of what we're doing. And then let's see, the other thing is, obviously, this is an intention. The intention here is to try to help, is to encourage the city and to equip the city with more opportunities to assist low-income homeowners in areas of the city that have suffered through displacement, which is primarily communities of color and particularly Black families that have been here in Seattle and have continued. I say here in Seattle as if I'm not currently sitting in Renton, but still in Seattle, and really trying to make sure that we're able to try and mitigate some of the displacement and gentrification that has happened, that has caused some of the problem, or much of the problems that have resulted in the Black community in particular being essentially pushed out of the city of Seattle, which we want to try and avoid. With all of that, I feel like I just unloaded a whole bunch of stuff there. I want to see if there's any questions or thoughts. I will note, if there are questions or thoughts, particularly about the accessory dwelling unit partnership program, I'm going to defer those to Rico and Nick, who seem to be both on the call. Also, Nick and or Rico, if either one of you wants to correct something I said or spell out something a little bit clearer, please feel free to raise your hand. Though I would ask that we keep it tight because we need to move on to the next section here shortly. So, any questions, thoughts, or feedback? Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Great presentation. Just a quick question. I'm really happy to see the Housing Trust Fund dollars increase year after year. I want to see that grow even more. So who do you think are the key people that we should talk to? This is a great room of people with some great contacts. So who do you think that we should reach out to make sure that fund continues to grow at the rate of which it is, especially in a tight budget year?
Absolutely. That is a great question, Jason. Thank you for asking. I chuckle because I know Jason knows the answer to that question, but he's teeing me up for an easy one there.
I actually don't. I have a couple of, but I
Oh,
want to know your opinion. I actually have one or two names. So I
there
really
you go.
don't. Those are good questions.
So the biggest thing is going to be talking to folks on the capital that are involved with the capital budget. So in the House, it's anybody in the capital budget committee. In the Senate, it is anybody in the Ways and Means committee. More specifically, if you want to narrow it down even further, the folks you really want to focus in on are going to be the folks that are in leadership of those committees, and more particularly that are leadership on the capital budget committees. So on the House side, it's the leadership of the capital budget. So Chair Theringer, as well as Lisa Callan. Representative Steele on the Republican side, and I know there's another Republican. I just don't have the list up in front of me, so I apologize. But those are going to be your key folks there. On the Senate side, it is going to be Senator Trudeau as the Democratic lead. She's really the person you want to make sure to really push hard with to make sure she knows the importance of it. On the Republican side, I believe it is Schessler, and I could be mistaken on that. No, did I see a head shake? No, Victoria. Feel free to chime in if
It'd either be Gaynor, Schessler, or Gildon.
Schessler.
Yeah, Schessler.
thank you. There you go. So I just didn't happen to have that up for me. So those are going to be the really key people, but in particular, those who are on the committee, anybody on the committee can talk to their leaders and make sure that they pass along the importance of that to the importance of that issue to their leaders, and they can hopefully prioritize that. So please make sure that anybody on those committees are doing that. But those are the key ones. Any other questions? Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to the next person, who I believe is Kathleen, my partner in crime in Seattle home ownership world.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for doing a great job on that section. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen. I'm the CEO and Executive Director at Homestead Community Land Trust, and excited to share cost reduction elements of the framework and platform that we've got this year. I am a member of the BHI Network Policy Group. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm going to be walking you through the cost reduction section. There are 4 items in this section, and the big picture on this is that there's been a lot of thinking and activity, as you'll see on the next slide, regarding property taxes. So property taxes appear in 3 of these items, and there's 2 lead policy items and 2 support policy items. So next slide, please. So lead, the first item is the Intergenerational Wealth Property Tax Payment Plan. The BHI Sustaining Home Owners Group has done a lot of work looking at property tax issues and ways to create relief for multi-generational households owning property. The group has moved to suggest this approach, which would create a property tax payment plan for family heirs when they inherit a home with significant unpaid property taxes. So this would allow them to structure a way to pay off the property taxes so that they don't have to sell the home to pay the property taxes. This would allow the homes to stay in families for generations, as we all would like that to be enabled. And it helps anchor intergenerational wealth and family wealth. So this group also explored adding this to Senator Orwell's foreclosure fairness trailer bill, but the trailer bill rules didn't allow for that to happen. So now they are working with the Department of Revenue and exploring whether this can be implemented as an administrative change rather than legislation. The second item is a low-income homeowner property tax reform. This would address providing a property tax exemption for low-income folks struggling to stay housed. This is a complement to some of the Department of Revenue guidance that exists in the community land trust world to create property tax that fits the value of the home. So this would potentially replace that DOR guidance. What this does is it establishes a pathway for meaningful property tax relief based on income. The group has met with Senator Frame on this subject, and a groundwork is being laid this year to bring this back in the 2027 session. And Senator Frame is one of the go-to people for tax policy legislation, and the group is really encouraged by her that this has some merit and will have a good path if we do the advance work correctly. So there will be some advocacy opportunities for all of us as this advances through the system. On the support items, there's the REIT exemption for Affordable Homes Act. This is one that Homestead and the Community Land Trust Coalition of Washington State is working on, and this would extend to all nonprofit sponsored affordable home sales the same REIT tax exemption that benefit Habitat sales. So there is an existing statute that exempts Habitat and any other self-help opportunity program models from REIT taxes, and this would just expand it to all nonprofit affordable homeownership models. The final support item is the seniors and veterans property tax exemption reform, and that would increase, there's an anticipated bill introduction in 2026. We don't have that number yet. But the key components of the bill are that it increases median income limits for seniors and veteran property tax exemptions, which are present in many counties, expands access to seniors who currently earn too much to qualify, simplifies the application process, adds a standard deduction option, and reduces the itemization that's required to achieve the exemption. We do expect this bill to drop soon, and the Sustaining Existing Homeowners Group has been studying who gets these exemptions and who doesn't, and partnering with community-based organizations to make sure that those who qualify do get them already, if they qualify. And they have been supporting Black seniors and veterans in that system and helping them navigate the system as it exists now. So, any questions? How'd I do, Bambi? Any questions on these cost reductions? These are cost reduction measures that reduce the cost of ownership, not reduce the cost to produce new homes. So these are focused directly on homeowners or home buyers. Questions? If not, I'll turn it back to Bambi. Who's next?
It's me, but thank you so much, Kathleen.
Yeah.
And I'll just add a different maybe take on the REIT exempt affordable homes. You know, we all understand that every dollar counts when we are talking about creating affordable homes. And so when you have any kind of taxation that's existing that could potentially be alleviated, those dollars can go to development. And so that is a direct result to whether or not we have more units, what the cost of those units are. And so very much a cost reduction that results in outcomes that we're all looking for here, which is again, increased homeownership for the Black community. Any other questions just coming up? Sometimes people take a minute. There's a question in their head from a couple presenters back. And since we did such a great job here moving through that, I just want to make sure that I'm going to give a quick pause and let anybody go ahead and raise their hand, bring up something that they were thinking about, maybe just coming to mind at this moment. All right. Going once, going twice, and you know, you'll have more opportunities here as we move through. So the last of the 4 buckets in our framework has to do with zoning and regulatory reform. And maybe you'll notice this if you kind of looked over our frameworks for the number of years we've been doing them. Some years you see one of these buckets with a whole bunch of different items in it. And other years, there may be fewer items in some of the buckets. And a lot of that is a reflection of what's happening politically, what's happening economically. And what is happening this year economically is that we are seeing a really tight budget. We're seeing a lot of uncertainty. And what that means is that legislators are going to be moving more towards change that they can control a little bit more. If they're needing funding for it, that's not a guarantee this year. So what you will notice is that our zoning and regulatory reform bucket has the most kind of policies out of any, because zoning and regulatory reform can often be a change that isn't going to require a large fiscal note, isn't going to be subject to those uncertainties of whether the money could be allocated there or will be allocated somewhere else. So we have a number of items to go through. But in our zoning and regulatory reform category, we have only one lead item, but it is an item that is a little complicated. It has 4 parts. So the Scalable Starter Home Production Plan is a scenario here that we've all been hearing about. It's a wonderful effort that came out of the CHA budget proviso funding that has produced a report this year. And the whole purpose of this particular lead item is that we begin to see the production of more affordable starter homes by realizing the plan. So the 4 parts of this have to do with kind of the minutia of how we can move forward with offsite construction development. And so there is something about inspections. We also have the idea of approved plans. There's, of course, going to be a required need for a lot of management of project, and then a demonstration project to show that this is something that's going to work. So right now we have a House and a Senate bill that we are seeing that will address the inspections and the approved plans to ensure that homes can be built at scale. You'll remember that the starter home plan is not just how can we build, 5 homes here, 100 homes there, 200 homes there. It's trying to look at the big scale of the need and figure out how to create some mechanisms to augment our really active homeownership development system with some more construction possibilities. And so these 2 bills will be allowing that kind of flexibility where the inspections can be done by a third party, and therefore there won't be a big backlog of waiting for an inspection just from the labor and industries people. That is what the bill from Representative I'm going to say it in Spanish, but maybe I'm wrong. It would be Manjares, but I think it's maybe pronounced Manjares. And Representative Peterson also co-sponsored. In terms of middle housing standard approved plans, there is a Senate bill from Senator Bateman. And both of these bills will be active. We'll be letting you know how you can lean in to advocate for them in the Policy Digest. The Project Management Collaborative was a really important part of this plan because the plan is extensive. It takes a systems change approach, which means that there is extensive collaboration needed. And the plan has decided that the best way forward is for a project management collaborative to really take on and take the reins of the plan. And so they have aggressively been out there telling people about the plan, raising funds to be able to launch this collaborative, and it is going to be launching this year. And right now they are in the effort of getting themselves organized. There are many different parts of the project management that needs to occur in the collaborative, but that's set and ready to go. So we'll hear updates as we move through this session and as we move through the year. The last thing is, of course, a demonstration project. Ideas are great, but ideas realized visibly where people can go and actually tangibly see them are always going to be more powerful. And so there was a capital budget allocation in 2025 for 1.75 million to fund basically demonstration projects on both the east and west side of the mountains in our state to prove the concepts in this plan. Unfortunately, they were moved into the Housing Trust Fund, and that provided a series of complications about how those funds could be used. So they will be moving back into the Affordable Housing Supply and Preservation account. And so you will see this in the capital budget. I believe it's called the Hillsdale project when you see it. So you'll see this fund, and it will not be kind of new dollars, but really a movement of dollars from last year to this year. And if you haven't read it, the Scalable Starter Home Production Plan was just featured in a Puget Sound Business Journal article. I'll be sure to have it in the digest on Friday. And members of this team are always happy to hear from you, answer your questions. So feel free to connect with me if you want to be further connected. Now, when I was saying that some of our buckets have more items than others, this is kind of evidence of that. The text font here is much smaller because I am trying to include all 8 of our support items on this particular slide. So we have 8 items here. And as I said at the beginning of this meeting, you know, policy moves fast. There may be things that are already changing in the list that we have. And there would be an example of this in the last 2 items here. So we have 8 support items. And 7 of these we know for sure are moving forward in 2026. But the third-party warranty condo reform bill, that was by Rep. Taylor, that's not going to be moving forward in 2026. So what is happening with that is some work was done within stakeholder groups and work group, but really we have a new commissioner in the Office of Insurance, and we need a little bit more time to be able to work with them. Their hands are super full after all of the natural disasters and flooding and a whole bunch of insurance related issues that have recently happened. And so the idea is that we will continue to work with them, but this will be a bill that is likely going to come into 2027, not in 2026. However, the stacked flats condo reform bill, which is also by Representative Taylor, this is going to be moving forward. There's a new bill number for that. It was just pre-filed, so House Bill 2304. And basically, this bill is actually quite a simple change, but it does have a big potential impact on middle housing condos being built. As you know, Ryan was saying, it's great that we have all of this legislation. We want to see things built. And so what will happen here is that specifically for stacked flats with 4 floors or less and 12 units or less as either, you know, middle housing condos, those will at this point be able to have an alternative warranty coverage allowed for them. And so that will ensure that they are built and not just hoped for. Insurance is a huge, very huge cost and has been an incredible deterrent to condo development in the state of Washington. Rep. Taylor has kind of taken the bull by the horns, attempting to begin to wrestle with the condo reform needed. We saw bills last year. It's a continuation of this work this year. Now, other bills in this list are also attempting to, do different things to be able to help us further our shared priority. One of the focus that we see here is around attempting to stop the excessive number of single-family homes and condos that are owned by equity firms. So we know that we're out here trying to help first-time homeowners get a home, and they're competing in a way that cannot create any type of fair sense of a playing field for competition. We are seeing a large purchase of single-family homes, starter homes, homes that tend to often be in communities and neighborhoods where we would like to see people remain and be able to become homeowners in their communities, and yet we're seeing a lot of these bought up. We have a bigger issue with this across the country in other areas where there have been a lot of home foreclosures, but we do see an increase in Washington State. And to be proactive, Senator Orwell, and also we're limiting investor-owned homes. We are seeing a difference. So we have the Corporate Homeowner Registry Program. And for the Corporate Homeowner Registry Program, we are looking again to try and create a way to track what's happening for all of these purchases that are occurring. In the limited investor-owned homes, we want to put out some legislation that is preserving this home supply by limiting the amount that can be purchased. Other changes that we see here in our regulatory reform have to do with some different possibilities. Elevator accessibility is a bill that we have here in our support agenda. This is looking at the accessibility for smaller scale elevator options that are going to still be meeting safety and disability standards, but will be providing more options. This is going to be very important as we think about stacked flats. Mixed income housing on faith-owned land. This is a bill that already has its first hearing ready to go. That hearing is going to be happening next week, and we'll be able to see opportunities for that in the digest this week. We're looking to produce more affordable homes on faith-owned land by allowing for mixed income development. So those are the state bills that are active in our zoning and regulatory reform bucket. We, of course, also have bills outside of the state level, and one that's, an important aspect is the Seattle Comprehensive Plan. As we heard earlier, we do have a new executive in Seattle, so Mayor Wilson, and we do expect to see a lot of leaning in from Mayor Wilson's transition teams and also permanent teams as we move into the Seattle Comprehensive Plan phases that will be happening in 2026. So in a future meeting, we'll be able to have a chance to learn more about the details of that so that you're able to lean in. So luckily, we are able to have a little bit more time than expected to be able to help you digest and to come up with questions and answers for you. So if there's anyone in the room who has a question, feel free. Raise your hand, put it in the chat, and we can talk a little bit more about what we've seen today. Hi, Ismail.
Hi,
How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. On the topic of off-site construction, I'm coming across a concern from a traditional lender that how they would lend funds or approve the disbursement of funds when the material is being built off-site and it's not in possession or not on the site of construction. How that issue is mitigated. I wanted to know a little bit.
You bet. Well, I will open it up to the room just in case there happens to be someone here from the Scalable Starter Home Production Plan who could give you a better answer for that. So I'm going to give that a second for someone to hear that request. I do know that I did speak with Chris, who's one of the people who works with this. I know she's up in an airplane at the moment, so not likely to hear from her. And I don't see anyone else reaching in. So what I'm going to say is my understanding is that the offsite construction scenario is still novel. It has been used, but not at the kind of scale we're talking about for starter homes. And so a lot of what's happening in the plan, if you've had the opportunity to see it, would address some of those questions. You know, how is this going to get financed? How are we going to make sure that we have these kind of permissions when we're used to stick-built site kind of construction, and we understand how those work, and we've learned our kind of ins and outs for that. But what will happen here when we're talking about this kind of scaled up offsite construction? So my understanding is that part of the plan is to address that. They're also working with the University of Washington in their new kind of research housing facility possibility to be able to understand what is happening right now in the entire ecosystem, what needs to change to get to where we are. So I don't, unfortunately, have a specific answer to that, but I can certainly make sure that I can get you an answer and connect it to someone who can help you kind of work that through.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is Victoria. Can I just jump in a little here to Ishmael? My experience in offsite construction right now is exclusively in manufactured housing, but I will say that both the Fannie and Freddie are very familiar with manufactured housing construction and the process of what that looks like from essentially a deposit is what needs to be made to the factory to begin development of the house or the housing unit. And that would be true for any modern method of construction, modular, panelitic, whatever it is. A deposit is made to the factory, and then the home is built and then delivered. What that more mirrors is actually a construction to permanent loan than a traditional like blanket mortgage loan. And so while it's similar, but you're looking at more of a construction to permanent type of lending scenario. And so I think as you're talking with potential lenders, one of the things you may want to mention is what happens in the manufactured housing space, and that is going to really mirror what would happen in those offsite construction lending scenarios as well.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Bambi. I'll keep looking and talking and keep this conversation going. And if I come across any hurdles, I'll approach you and then you can guide me how to address this, you know. The second question I have is the example project or the model project. Have you selected one or are you in the process, or what are the criterias, and that 1.75 how is to be used? Just a little bit more on that I would like to know.
You bet. So what I understand of that, and you know, I'm going to put in the chat here real quick, just the link to the Scalable Starter Home Production Plan, so that you have kind of that resource at your fingertips if you haven't had a chance to review it. So the idea is, again, as stated before, that they're looking for state of Washington solutions. So it's not going to make sense that this is only in one particular geography, one type of town, one type of market. So the idea would be that there will be development that occurs both on the west side of the mountains and the east side of the mountains. The purpose is to utilize some of these new processes, see if they create the efficiencies that they are going to create, reveal anything maybe that was unexpected so that they can make sure that any future legislation and future work is going to absorb those learnings. In terms of the total number of units, I've heard range anywhere, 30 units to more. It depends on what they're going to do, the land that they're looking at, which has been kind of changing, right? They had themselves set up in 2025, assuming they had the money. And then when it was put in the wrong bucket, that kind of created a little bit of a reset, and allowed them to continue those relationships and figure out what would be the next step. And so I'm sure they're ready to go. And I'd be happy to certainly connect you with Marty and Chris, who are in this, head over heels, and would be able to provide you with the latest details.
Yeah, I'm in touch. I met Marty, but I need to sit down with him and go through some of the details. Yes. Okay.
That sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Kathleen, I saw your hand up a little earlier. Did something, resolve itself?
I was going to respond to the question, just to elaborate a little bit on what Victoria was saying. So I wasn't clear on what the question was being asked about: construction funding, lending, or mortgage lending. And there's far less questions in the mortgage lending side, although there are some, and they focus a lot on the value of the home and how to value the home. Is it as valuable as a stick built? So those are things that, but it requires educating the loan officers and the underwriters around the specific product that is being established on the site. There are bigger questions around construction lending on these projects and how that works. So there's more work to be done on that side to help banks and the traditional lenders in affordable housing figure out how to support these projects. Am I right, Victoria?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I think that like the programs, the models, they're out there. They're just not activated for all of the potential options. And so it's just a lot of conversations. And if a bank wants to hold the debt themselves, that's honestly the easiest. But to find a bank that wants to hold the debt themselves, but if they're looking to sell the debt on the secondary market, those are just larger conversations that frankly are actually having outside of these conversations. This is a large conversation that's happening nationwide. Like the Lincoln Land Institute is leading a lot of these conversations.
Yeah. And my 2 cents is, as important as this is, I think support for people on the ground that know how to build stick built has been one of the major barriers to affordable homeownership production. And I would love to see equal enthusiasm for just enhancing the capacity of existing developers as well.
Well, it's certainly a both and kind of scenario, right? We have a very large need, and it will be taking every tool that we can have in order to try and meet that moment. All right. Well, because our presenters were so excellent and your questions were so succinct, we're looking good on time here, a few minutes. And so I'm just going to, again, I know you've heard a lot of information today. In the agenda that was sent to the group yesterday, you have the link to the document for the current version of the framework. Is there any question rising that you'd like to bring out today in these last few minutes here before we move to open floor time? And if you don't have a question, you're certainly welcome to share your enthusiasm about any bill that is getting you very excited on this framework this year. Ryan.
Sorry about that. There was something that I kind of wanted to note. It's not just in general, and I'm not even 100% sure that I know how best that I want to be able to raise this as an issue and highlight it for everybody. But as probably most folks know that are in the housing production space or homeownership production space, Housing Trust Fund Awards for the last year came out, I believe it was like earlier this week, right, Kathleen? It was like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I think it was. And if you look at the results, something you'll notice is that only 9% of the overall awards went to King County projects. And if you look closer, only two of those and now looking even outside of King County, only two went to projects within Pierce County, at least according to the award. Needless to say, like, that feels like a concern or a problem that needs to be addressed and highlighted. I will note that when this kind of thing has happened in the past, areas that did not receive a sufficient level of funding raised that as a significant concern, and it did seem to get addressed in later years. I'll note just kind of realistically, in an area, we all work not just in King County, but within our area, our service area that we're intentionally working to serve. And I'll note those specific three counties, right? King County, Pierce County, and Thurston County. At least two of the three, and I haven't looked at Thurston County yet, sure seem to have not been invested in anywhere near. In fact, there's only two projects in Thurston County as well for less than, oh, wow, lovely. About $600,000 was invested in Thurston County out of $62 million that was awarded. I think it is really important that we continue to advocate for the Housing Trust Fund and that we elevate that as a priority, as an important issue. But I also think that we need to be very much more, or very clear, that it is important that they are funding the area that we are particularly serving in to an adequate level, which, at least in my opinion, they are not even coming close. So just kind of wanted to.
I'll just add on top of that, that King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties are the counties that have the most people of color in Washington state, and combined, they represent 56% of the entire population of the state. So the Venn diagram of trying to create Black homeownership, and our footprint, our policy footprint that we're trying to impact anyways, is King and Pierce. That if we were just funding housing on a proportional basis as it relates to population, our counties, these, King and Pierce would represent a much more significant percent. But it's, as Ryan knows, it's a political calculation because we need the support of all of the majorities of the senators and representatives in the legislature to pass these bills. And if they don't see anything happening in their districts, they're less likely to pass the funding for places like us over on the coast, as we're referred to. So I'm not sure the way to solve that under the current system.
Well, and just adding in, kind of talking about data, think that's always a great way to step forward in that conversation, right? To be able to provide that evidence. Something that I'll add as we look through the evidence of the Covenant Homeownership Program statewide and kind of number of people assisted. 24 counties have been touched by the Covenant Homeownership Program, but both Pierce and King counties have the largest numbers of homeowner uptake for assistance from that program. So definitely hearing that, we need to be creating opportunities. We are seeing demand. And so definitely part of what we're here to do as advocates. Any other questions coming up for anyone? Well, I'm going to move us forward to kind of close out here. Again, we always want to make sure that we leave a little bit of open floor time for news from you, news that's for the good of the whole. As I stated a number of times, this is a dynamic process in policy. Something new might be happening that none of us have heard about, and it's happening today, but it's super relevant to us. So feel free if you have something to share. We are here to talk about what we want to advocate for, and anything that you're thinking about is worth talking about. Nicole?
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Of course, timing is perfect. My grandson is showing up when you ask that question. But I wanted to remind everyone about the the BHI Policy Summit. I'm putting the link in the chat. This is for the whole policy. This is for everyone who's a part of the BHI network. We want to make sure we come out and support the second annual summit. Last year was a phenomenal, and we want to make sure that folks are coming out and registering. So I put the link in the chat in the event folks didn't know how to get a hold of that. And also the link for the Western Washington Realtors Gala. So the gala is coming up on the 24th. We would love to have community out and to have, if you have sponsorship opportunities, please feel free to reach out. I also put those links in the site. So look forward to seeing everyone next month, hopefully at the gala on the 24th and also at the summit on the 10th of February.
Thanks for that, Nicole. And, just so we don't have confusions about summits, that is the All Partner Summit. We did just finish the BHI Policy Summit in December, but the All Partner Summit is kind of like the moment for everyone involved in BHI. And if you had the privilege of being able to be there last year, it was an incredibly inspiring event. Learned so much and heard so much, and I know that everybody walking out of that room at the All Partner Summit last year felt like they were levitating a little bit. They were feeling really inspired and ready to go. So happy to see that link, and also great to see the link for the gala. Anything else anyone wants to mention for the good of the group?
I'll just note that gala is a lot of fun. Would encourage everybody to go if you can. I went last year.
Ooh, not even just have cake. You can win a cake. A cake makes a party, or at least that's what the lieutenant governor thinks. And so we were making sure that we had some big cakes at our CHA celebration. Anything else that anyone would like to bring in? There is something top of mind for me, but it's kind of a little bit different in context than what we usually talk about here, because again, we usually talk about what we want to support in our advocacy. But I do want you to understand that there are currently some advocacy needs that may be about trying to not necessarily support bills that have been submitted, but to certainly question those bills and try and resist their success. And so one of those that I'm going to bring up here is House Bill 2153. This is a bill that is looking to prohibit homebuyers from receiving multiple state-funded down payment assistance loans or grants. This is a bill that has been pre-filed, and it will have a really deleterious effect on affordable homeownership for homeowners to be able to stack the different types of assistance that they can get to be able to complete their homeownership journey and become a new first-time homeowner. So if that's not on your radar, I hope it will be. I hope you will connect with those legislators and show up to say that that's not something you're supporting, that you really do believe that Fannie and Freddie have said stacking is the norm, has always been the norm, is something that is supported, and this particular bill isn't going to solve any problems, it's going to create some problems. And so want to make sure that that's on your radar there. All right. Well, if there's any last words from anyone in the room, feel free to speak up. Other than that, I'd just, again, like to wish you all a very happy new 2026. I know it probably feels like you're 3 months in after getting through the last 3 days, but it is the 4th day in this new year, and super excited to see you all here, to have you staying connected. If I can help you in any way, shape, or form to understand what you're seeing or hearing about, please do feel free to reach out to me. And other than that, it's been great to see you all today, and I hope I will see you in February for our next meeting, and I hope I will hear from you prior to then. Again, the Policy Network Digest will be out this Friday, hot off the presses, 8 a.m., and whatever opportunities for advocacy can occur for next week that we know of at this moment, because it's actually on the calendar already, should be in there. If you are a champion who has something you want people to be seeing, please be sure to reach out to me at the latest end of day today if you want to see that something that's going to be there at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, all. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Bambi.
Thank you, Ms. Ruby. Thank you all.